After the mistrial in the Michael Dunn case, we're seeing renewed attention on self-defense laws, especially in Florida, and whether they're evenly applied. Now we're learning about the case of Michael Giles, a former U.S. airman who was outside of a Tallahassee club one night in 2010 when a fight broke out. No one reported seeing Giles fighting, but he was separated from his friends and got a gun from a car for which he had a concealed carry permit. He then says he returned to the crowd to look for his friends, and a man punched him. Giles said he believed his life was in danger, and he fired his gun. The other man was hit in the leg. He was out of the hospital the next morning, and Giles was charged with attempted murder. One witness testified the man who threw the punch, quote, leaped like a frog to Giles and just went at it to his face. She says before he punched Giles, he was, quote, excited and acting crazy and talking and cursing and upset and angry and agitated. The victim testified, quote, honestly, my motive was to hit the first person I get to, I was going to hit them. And when he was asked if he, quote, ran his entire body to strike this person, he answered yes. Prosecutors said Giles was standing when he was fired. But a defense expert testified, quote, the initial trajectory of the bullet was just above the surface of the asphalt, suggesting he was knocked to the ground. Michael Giles was convicted of aggravated battery and sentenced to 25 years in jail. But his family says he was standing his ground, and they're fighting for his freedom. Joining me now is Phyllis Giles, Michael Giles' mother, and Florida State Senator Dwight Bullard, who's been pushing for Michael Giles' sentence to be commuted. Thank you both for being here.
With that, Governor, good luck.
Phyllis, you believe this was a clear case of self-defense. Now, some might question why Michael retrieved his gun. What would you like to say to those that would question that?
When Michael went to retrieve his gun, he really didn't go to it wasn't planned. He did not go to the car to get the gun. He went to the car as a rally point. I'm proud military, so is Michael military at the time. So it's something called a rally point. When you get separated from your friends or from your team, you have a rally point. So the car was the rally point, had Michael and his friends got separated, which happened. Michael went to the car and he retrieved his gun. At the time, after everyone was standing around him, he was afraid to stay at the car. So at that point, like I said, he got the gun from the car and then he went back to the crowd to find his friends so they could leave. And at that point, he got punched from behind.
Now, when he returned looking for his friends, he got punched from behind, and he's saying that he felt threatened, and the witnesses say this guy was appearing crazed and agitated, so he shot the guy, and the guy was hit in the leg and was out of the hospital the next morning. Yet Michael was prosecuted for attempted murder.
Correct.
Senator, you'd like the governor to commute Michael Giles' sentence, and you wrote him a letter saying, quote, his act of frightening away an attacker by firing a gun was as much self-defense as that allowed understand your ground provisions. The only difference in Mr. Giles' case is that he allowed his attacker to live. This is what you wrote. As you see it, is that the problem with stand your ground, Senator?
Yes, as we've seen with both the Zimmerman verdict and the verdict of Michael Dunn, it seems as though in Florida you can only go to jail if you miss the victim as opposed to killing them. And that is problematic, and that's the wrong message that the law is sending. All the proponents have said, well, the law wasn't intended for that purpose, but as we're seeing in case after case after case, whether it's Michael Giles, whether it's Marissa Alexander, that seems to be the occurrence that keeps happening.
Now, are all of the supporters of Stand Your Ground and all of them that are attacking people like me that disagree with it, have they rallied behind Mr. Giles? I missed the rallies and the support for Mr. Giles by the self-defense and Stand Your Ground crowd in Florida.
Well, oddly enough, you're absolutely right. All the proponents and the sponsors of Stand Your Ground have yet to use Mr. Giles as the same rallying point as they did with Mr. Zimmerman. In the case of Michael Dunn, someone who was this so-called responsible gun owner. In the case of Mr. Giles, we're talking about an Air Force veteran, an Iraqi war veteran, someone who did in fact have a concealed carry permit. And if anyone that was a glaring example of someone who should have everyone rallying to his defense, it should be Michael Giles. And so I felt it very important that the governor look at Mr. Giles' case and commute his sentence. But again, although he encouraged Florida to pray for the family of Trayvon Martin, I have yet to hear him speak to the plight of Mr. Giles.
Now, Phyllis, you started a Change.org petition to commute Michael's sentence. More than 100,000 people have signed. What does that mean to you as a mother?
It means that we have a lot of support, and the people do care, and everyone sees the injustice that there is in Florida. So that's what it means to me.
Senator, Michael was sentenced to 25 years because of mandatory minimums known as the 10-20 life law in Florida. That means if you're in possession of a gun during a felony, you're sentenced to a minimum of 10 years. If you fire a gun during a felony, minimum of 20 years. And if you injure or kill someone with a gun, you're sentenced to 25 years. What's wrong with that law, Senator?
Oh, well, naturally what's wrong with it has been wrongfully applied in two high-profile cases. In the case of Miss Alexander and, of course, in the case of Michael Giles, you see a situation in which you have a victim of domestic violence and in the case of Mr. Giles, a victim of assault. So somehow you create the commission of a crime when there was no crime committed, and in both instances you wrongfully convict both a woman who's being abused and again, I can't reiterate enough, a war veteran who was being assaulted outside of a club here in Tallahassee. And that for me is problematic in terms of its application, and it seems to be a constant occurrence, especially among people of color.